She walked into Tucson with a horse worth $100 and a sign that said 10. Evelyn Hartley did not look at anyone. She kept her eyes on the road, on Dusty's ears, on the dust settling around her boots. She had rehearsed what she would say. She had not rehearsed what it would feel like. If this story has ever found its way to your corner of the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to know how far Evelyn's voice has traveled. And if you haven't subscribed yet, stay until the end. This one will earn it. Arizona Territory, August 1884. The summer had taken everything it could reach. Evelyn had watched it happen inch by inch, the creek dropping, the pasture going brown, the hay supply shrinking to what she could store in the smaller barn. She had sold 2 horses in June at fair prices. She had sold a third in July at a price that embarrassed her. By August, she had 1 debt she could not push further, and 1 horse she could not bear to lose, and she had finally understood that those 2 facts could not both be true at the same time. Dusty was 12 years old. Chestnut with a white blaze that her brother Jesse had joked looked like a lightning bolt drawn by a child. Jesse had helped her train him from the time the gelding was a yearling. They had worked him slow and patient the way their father had taught them before the consumption took him. Dusty had carried supplies between settlements when the work dried up. He had earned his keep 100 times. He had also never asked her for anything she wasn't willing to give. The feed debt was $10.40. Evelyn had 40 cents in her coat pocket. She had written the sign herself in her clearest hand, and she had made the number 10 because it was the exact figure that would keep the supplier from taking the remaining 2 mares she'd managed to hold through the drought. Not a dollar more, not a dollar less. She tied Dusty at the post outside the trading post and propped the sign against his left shoulder, and she stood back and looked at it. The way she might look at a wound she'd just bandaged, relieved it was done, sick about what it had taken. That's a fine animal. She turned. Nathan Crow was already walking toward her from across the street, moving with the unhurried confidence of a man who had never once worried about where his next meal was coming from. He was broad-shouldered, well-dressed for the territory, and his eyes moved over Dusty the way a man's eyes move over something he's already decided to own. "Yes," Evelyn said. "Doesn't look like a $10 horse to me." "He's not." Crow stopped in front of her. He was smiling, but the smile stopped well short of his eyes. "Then why's the sign say 10? "Because 10 is what I need." He studied her face, and she held still and let him. Because she had learned a long time ago that showing discomfort was the same as showing weakness, and she couldn't afford either one right now. "Well," Crow said, reaching into his coat. "Lucky for both of us, I happen to have $10 that needs a good home." He held out the bills. Evelyn looked at them. The number she'd written on that sign had seemed honest when she wrote it, and it still seemed honest now, but standing in front of the money with Dusty, 3 feet behind her, she felt something move in her chest that she hadn't expected. Not grief exactly. Something quieter and heavier. She reached for the bills. "You're selling him for $10. The voice came from her left, not loud, not demanding, just level and clear, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to stop a conversation. She turned. A man she didn't recognize was standing a few feet away. He was tall, lean, weathered in the way that came from years of work rather than years of hard living. He wore a plain hat and a plain coat, and he was looking at Dusty with the expression of someone who actually saw the animal, not just the number. Crow's jaw tightened. "This is a private transaction." The man didn't look at Crow. "That horse is worth considerably more than $10. You know it. She knows it." Evelyn dropped her hand before it touched the money. "I'm aware of what he's worth." "Then why 10? She met his eyes. They were steady and gray, and they didn't have pity in them, which was the only reason she answered honestly. "Because 10 is what I owe." Something shifted in his expression. Not sympathy, something more like recognition. Crow stepped forward. "Like I said, private transaction. I'd appreciate it if you moved along." The man finally looked at him. "I'm sure you would." He looked back at Evelyn. "My name is Cole Bennett. I have a ranch 4 miles east of here. I'm not going to buy your horse." Evelyn blinked. Then what exactly are you doing? I'm making you a different offer. Crow laughed a short dismissive sound. The lady's already decided. She hasn't taken the money yet, Cole said. He was right. Her hand was still at her side. Cole turned back to Evelyn and spoke directly without decoration. You train horses. I can see it in the way he responds to your position. He's watching you, not the post, not the street. That's not luck. That takes years. He paused. I've got 4 young horses on my property that need the kind of work you've been doing with him. I've also got a feed account at Morrison's that I've never had trouble with. I'll settle your debt today. In exchange, you come work my horses. Fair wage. Written contract, nothing informal about it. Evelyn stared at him. Why? She said. Because your horse is worth more than $10, and so are you, and I'd rather see both of you working than see Nathan Crow get a bargain he didn't earn. Crow's voice went cold. Bennett, this doesn't concern you. Cole looked at him again. You've bought 3 animals this month at distress prices from families who couldn't hold out through the drought. Mrs. Whitfield's mule, the Garner boys' draft horse, and now this. He kept his voice even. I'm not accusing you of anything illegal. I'm just saying I've seen the pattern and I'm not interested in watching it continue. The silence that followed was the specific kind that happens when a man has been named accurately and publicly and has nothing to say in response. Crow pocketed his money. He looked at Evelyn with a smile that had shed all pretense of friendliness. When this arrangement falls through, he said, and it will, you know where to find me. He tipped his hat and walked away. Evelyn watched him go. Then she turned back to Cole. I don't take charity, she said. I know, he said. That's why I didn't offer any. She didn't agree that day. She rode home, rubbed Dusty down, and sat at the table in the small kitchen where Jessie used to read by lamplight, and she went through the offer. The way she went through every decision, slowly, from every angle, looking for the place where it stopped being sound. She couldn't find it. Cole Bennett's name was known in the valley. Her brother had mentioned it once or twice. A man who ran a clean operation, paid fair, didn't cut corners. She had never had reason to look closer than that. Now she did. She went to Maggie Wells the next morning. Maggie was their nearest neighbor, a widow who had lived on the edge of the territory for 30 years and who had the specific kind of wisdom that comes not from education, but from having survived enough seasons to know the difference between what matters and what just feels like it does. Evelyn sat at her table and described the offer without embellishment, and Maggie listened the way she always did, without interrupting, without redirecting, until Evelyn ran out of words. Then Maggie said, You're not asking me if it's a good deal. You already know it's a good deal. I'm asking if it's a trap. What kind of trap? The kind where a man offers you fair terms and then changes them once you're dependent. Maggie poured coffee. Cole Bennett has had 3 women work his ranch in the last 8 years. All 3 left when they were ready to leave with what they were owed and a reference that got them better work afterward. She set the pot down. He's not a generous man by nature. He's a fair one. There's a difference. Evelyn wrapped both hands around the cup. He knew who I was, she said. He didn't say it, but something in the way he spoke, it wasn't the speech of a man who just happened to be standing nearby. Maggie was quiet for a moment. You might be right about that, she said finally. I don't know. But what I do know is that you've got 2 mares, no income, and a debt that'll come back in 30 days. A fair deal from a man with a complicated motive is still a fair deal. Evelyn looked at her. What's his motive? Maggie picked up her cup. That's what you go find out. She rode to the Bennett Ranch the next afternoon. It was larger than she'd pictured, not ostentatious, but solid, built for function rather than impression, with good fencing and a barn that showed recent work. A man named Tom Aldridge met her at the gate mid-60s, with the kind of face that had stopped pretending to be welcoming a long time ago. You the horsewoman, he said. Evelyn Hartley. He looked her over with the specific assessment of a ranch hand who has seen too many people come and go to bother with pleasantries. Boss said you might come. He's in the far paddock. He pointed. Don't let him give you the short version of the contract. Make him read the whole thing out loud. He glosses. She walked to the paddock and found Cole working one of the young horses on a long line, a gray 2-year-old with good bone but nervous feet. The kind of animal that took patience before it took instruction. She stood at the fence and watched him for 3 minutes before he acknowledged her. When he did, he didn't stop working the horse. "You came," he said. "I have questions first." "Go ahead." "The feed debt. You'd pay it directly, not through me." "Yes. My name stays on the Hartley property. No transfer, no lien, nothing with my land as security. Correct. If I find the work isn't what you described, I give 2 weeks' notice and we're square." "Fair." She paused. The gray horse made a nervous sidestep, and Cole corrected it with a single quiet shift of his weight, small, precise, effective. She noticed that. It told her something. "Why did you really step in yesterday?" she said. "And I don't want the Nathan Crow explanation. That might be true, but it's not all of it." Cole brought the horse to a stop. He turned and looked at her across the fence. "I knew your brother," he said. The air went out of the moment. Evelyn kept her expression still. "Jesse. He sold me a horse 3 years ago. Good animal, honest deal. We talked for a while." He paused. "I heard what happened to him last spring. I'm sorry." Jesse had died in April, a riding accident on the upper trail. The kind of thing that happened in this territory with a regularity that didn't make it easier to absorb. He had gone out in the early morning and hadn't come back, and when they found him, the ground told a story that Evelyn had never felt entirely settled about. She had told herself the unsettled feeling was grief. She had told herself that enough times that she'd almost started believing it. "He never mentioned you," she said. "He had no reason to. We only spoke the once." Cole picked up the lead line again. "But I remembered him, and when I saw you standing there with that sign, I knew who you were before you said your name." "How?" "The way you stood." Jesse stood the same way. He looked at the horse. Like someone who'd learned that the world didn't owe them anything and had decided to be fine with that. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "That's either a very kind observation," she said, "or a very useful one." Cole almost smiled. "It's both. That doesn't make it untrue." She looked at him steadily. "If I find out that knowing Jesse is the reason you're doing this, that this is about guilt or debt or whatever it is, men feel when they think they owe something to a dead man's memory." "Then you leave," Cole said. "Same 2 weeks' notice, same terms." She studied him. "All right," she said. "All right, you'll take the offer, or all right, you've heard enough." "Both," she said. "Same as yours, that doesn't make it untrue." She started work on a Monday. Tom Aldridge did not make it easy. He wasn't hostile. He was precise the way a man is precise when he's been doing something correctly for decades and has limited patience for anyone who might do it differently. He showed her the feed rotation, the medication cabinet, the breeding ledger, and he did all of it in the clipped, efficient manner of someone completing an obligation rather than offering a welcome. "4 horses need assessment," he said. "Boss wants your opinion on the gray first, then the 2 bays." "What about the roan?" Tom paused. "What about her?" "She's favoring her right front. I saw it when I came in yesterday." He looked at her. "She's been seen." "By who?" "Doc Ferris." "What did he say?" "Bruised hoof, rest in time." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Did he check the pastern?" "The way she's shifting her weight isn't hoof bruising. It's higher up." Tom's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. "I'll mention it. I can look at her this afternoon if you'd like a second opinion." "I'll mention it," he said again and walked away. She let it go. 2 days later, Cole found her at the roan stall. "Tom said you flagged something." "I might be wrong." "You're not," he said. "Ferris came back out this morning. You were right about the pastern. She'd have gone lame in another week if we'd kept her on the current schedule." Evelyn didn't say anything. Cole leaned on the stall door. "Tom's not going to apologize." "I know. But he's going to listen differently from here on." "I know that too." Cole looked at her for a moment. "How'd you learn to read horses like that?" "Jesse taught me some. My father taught me the rest." She ran her hand along the roan's shoulder. And the horses taught me what they didn't. Cole nodded. He was about to leave and then he stopped. The breeding ledger, he said. You've been in it. You asked me to manage it. I know. Did you notice anything? Evelyn kept her hand moving along the roan's neck. I noticed a page is missing, between June of 1881 and October of the same year. Pages fall out. This one was cut, she said. Clean edge. Whoever did it was careful. Cole said nothing. She looked at him. You know about it. I know there's a gap, he said carefully. I don't know why. When did you first notice it? He was quiet for a moment. About 2 months ago. Right before you started looking for additional staff, she said. The silence between them had a specific quality, the kind that forms when two people are both thinking the same thing, but neither has enough facts yet to say it out loud. I'll keep an eye on it, Evelyn said. Cole straightened. Don't go looking for trouble on my behalf. I'm not, she said. I'm protecting my employment. If there's something wrong with your records, it eventually becomes my problem too. He looked at her for a long moment. All right, he said. You keep saying that, she said. Because you keep making arguments I can't argue with. By the end of her second week, Evelyn had established a rhythm that Tom Aldridge grudgingly respected, and that the younger ranch hand's two brothers named Price, both in their early 20s, openly admired. She had reassessed all 4 horses, corrected the feeding schedule for the gray, and spent 3 evenings going carefully through the breeding ledger, noting every anomaly she found. There were 3 beside the missing page. Small things. Dates that didn't align. An entry for a horse sold in September that appeared in the purchase column in November of the same year under a different name. She said nothing yet. She wrote everything down in a small notebook she kept in her coat pocket. On a Thursday evening, Maggie Wells appeared at the ranch gate on her old bay mare, carrying a covered dish and wearing the expression of a woman who had decided to involve herself and was comfortable with that decision. Evelyn met her outside. I was in town, Maggie said, handing down the dish. Thought I'd bring supper and news. What news? Nathan Crow has been asking questions about you. Maggie swung down from the mare. Not hostile questions, information questions. How long you've been on your property, whether your brother left a will, whether the deed was recorded properly. Evelyn went still. Who was he asking? Ida Finch. Her daughter Clara works at the county office. Maggie looked at her steadily. I thought you should know. The deed was recorded, Evelyn said. Jesse handled it the year he took over the property. I know that. But Crow asking means he's either found something or he's hoping to find something. She paused. Or he's manufactured something. The word landed with a weight that Evelyn felt in her sternum. She thought about the missing page in the breeding ledger. She thought about the way Crow had looked at her the moment before he offered the money. Not the look of a man evaluating a horse, but the look of a man evaluating a situation he had already thought through. She thought about Jesse, about the upper trail, about the unsettled feeling she had never fully resolved. Maggie, she said, when exactly did Jesse die? April 14th. And when did Crow first start buying distressed livestock this summer? Maggie frowned. April, maybe the end of March. Why? Evelyn looked at the breeding ledger she was still holding. The missing page covered June through October of 1881. Jesse had bought the property formally with the deed recorded in November of 1881. The page had been removed from Cole's records. Not from hers. From Cole's. Whoever had cut that page had known something about both properties. I need to ask Cole something, Evelyn said. Now. She handed Maggie the dish back and walked toward the main house, and for the first time since she had walked into Tucson with a $10 sign and nothing left to lose. She felt the shape of something much larger than a drought and a debt settling around her like weather coming in from the west. She didn't know yet what it was, but she knew with the same certainty she'd felt about the roan's pastern that it was real and that it had started long before this summer. She found Cole at his desk with a lamp and a week-old newspaper and the expression of a man pretending to read while actually thinking about something else entirely. She put the breeding ledger on the desk in front of him. "The missing page," she said. "The entries on either side of it. Do you know what horse was being recorded in that period?" Cole looked at the ledger. He looked at her. "A gray stallion," he said. "I sold him in the fall of 1881. Good animal. Buyer was from out of Tucson." "Do you remember the buyer's name?" Something changed in his face. A slow, careful change, like a man watching ice shift under his feet. "I remember," he said quietly. "Was it Crow?" Cole set the newspaper down. "No," he said. He looked at her for a long moment, and the lamplight threw shadows that made his face harder to read than usual, and she waited. "The buyer's name," he said slowly, "was Hartley." The room went quiet. Evelyn heard her own breathing. "Jesse," she said. Not a question. "Jesse Hartley." Cole's voice was careful and even. "He bought that stallion in September of 1881. Paid fair price. We recorded it." He paused. 2 months later, the page was gone. Evelyn looked at the ledger. Who had access to this office in those 2 months? Ranch hands, a few visitors. He paused. "Nathan Crow came out in October of 81 to look at some cattle. I didn't sell to him. He left empty-handed." The shape of it came together in a way that made her stomach drop. Crow had been to this ranch in October of 1881. The page documenting Jesse's purchase had disappeared sometime between September and whenever Cole first noticed it missing. Jesse had died in April, and now Crow was asking questions about the deed Jesse had recorded in November, the same month the page had gone missing. "Cole," she said, "did Jesse ever mention Crow to you?" "No." "Did Crow ever ask you about Jesse after that cattle visit?" Cole was very still. "Once," he said. "Last spring. Right around—" He stopped. "Right around April," Evelyn said. Neither of them spoke. Outside, the horses moved in the paddock. The lamp threw a steady orange light across the desk. Somewhere past the window, the territory stretched out in the dark, dry and wide and full of things that happened without witnesses. Cole looked at her, and this time his eyes didn't have the careful steadiness she had come to expect from him. They had something else in them, the particular look of a man who has just realized that a question he thought was already answered may never have been answered at all. "What are you thinking?" he said. Evelyn laid her hand flat on the open ledger on the smooth edge where the page had been cut clean. "I'm thinking," she said, "that my brother didn't die the way they told me he did." Cole didn't move from his desk. He sat with his hands flat on either side of the breeding ledger and looked at Evelyn the way a man looks when he's trying to decide whether the ground beneath him is still solid. "Say it plainly," he said. "I just did." "Say it again." Evelyn pulled the chair from the corner and sat down across from him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Jesse went out on the upper trail on a clear morning in April. Good weather, a horse he'd ridden 100 times, a route he knew better than any trail in this territory, and he didn't come back. She paused. The story was he fell. The horse spooked, he went down on a bad angle, and that was it. She looked at Cole. "I was told not to look too hard at the details because grief makes people look for explanations that aren't there." "Who told you that?" "Deputy Earl Voss." Cole's jaw tightened. "He came out to the property himself," Evelyn continued. "Very kind, very thorough in the way he explained why there was nothing to look into. And at the time I was so far inside the grief that I let him explain. I let him close the door, and I didn't put my hand in it." She pressed her fingers against the cut edge of the missing page. "I'm putting my hand in it now." Cole stood up. He walked to the window and stood there with his back to her and his hands at his sides, and she could see the tension in his shoulders from across the room. "Voss," he said. "You know him." "Everyone knows Voss. He's been deputy in this county for 11 years. He paused. "He's also the man who told me Crow's cattle visit in October of 81 was routine, that Crow had no particular interest in the properties along this stretch." "Did you believe him?" Cole turned around. "At the time. And now?" He looked at the ledger. "Now I'm looking at a page that was cut from my own records during the week Crow was on this property, and I'm hearing that the man who closed your brother's death investigation was the same man who told me there was nothing to worry about." He exhaled slowly. "So no, not anymore." Evelyn leaned forward. I need to know everything that happened the week Crow came to look at your cattle. Every person he spoke to, every place he went on this property, every question he asked. That was 3 years ago. Tom Aldridge has been here longer than 3 years. Cole looked at her. Tom was here, she said. And Tom remembers everything. Tom Aldridge did not want to have the conversation. He made that clear in the first 30 seconds when Cole found him in the barn, finishing the evening feed, and asked him to come to the house, and Tom said, "If this is about the Crow visit, I'd rather leave it." "You knew I was going to ask eventually," Cole said. "I was hoping eventually was further off." Tom set down the feed bucket. He looked at Evelyn. "She's the one pushing this. She's the one who figured it out," Cole said. "That's different." Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked past both of them toward the house, and they followed him, and he sat down at the kitchen table and folded his hands on top of it, like a man preparing for a deposition. "What do you want to know?" he said. Evelyn sat across from him. "When Crow came in October of '81, where did he go on the property? Barn, paddock, the north pasture to look at the cattle?" Tom paused. "And the office." "Cole's office. He asked to see the bloodline records, said he was considering a purchase and wanted to verify the lineage." Tom looked at Cole. "You weren't here that afternoon. You'd gone to town. I let him in because he'd been on the property before, and I didn't see the harm." Cole said nothing. "How long was he in the office?" Evelyn asked. 20 minutes, maybe 25. "Was he alone?" Tom's jaw tightened. "His man was with him. Pete Morrow. Big fellow doesn't talk much." "Did either of them touch the ledger?" Crow looked at it. "He asked me to leave him to it. Said he worked faster without someone standing over him. I thought he just meant he didn't want to feel watched." Tom stopped. "I was outside the door the whole time." "But you weren't in the room." "No." The word sat on the table between all three of them. Evelyn kept her voice even. "Tom, I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm saying that Crow had 20 minutes alone with that ledger, and one page is gone, and the page that's gone documents a transaction that connects this ranch to my brother's property 2 months before Jesse recorded his deed." Tom stared at her. "If that page still existed," she continued, "it would show a chain of ownership that might make Jesse's deed harder to challenge." She paused. "Without it, there's a gap in the record. And if someone wanted to claim that Jesse's acquisition of the property was improper, that the stallion was used as some kind of informal payment for land that was never properly transferred." "That's a reach," Cole said. "It's the reach a dishonest lawyer makes when he's working for someone who wants the land," Evelyn said. "It doesn't have to be airtight. It just has to create enough confusion to make the deed contestable." The silence in the room changed quality. Tom looked at Cole. "She's right." "I know she's right," Cole said. Tom looked back at Evelyn. "There's something else." He said it quietly, like a man releasing a weight he'd been holding too long. "The morning your brother died, I was in town early, before dawn. I saw Crow's wagon on the East Road. Not the town road, the East Road." He let that sit. "The East Road runs along the bottom of the upper trail." Evelyn went completely still. "You never said anything," Cole said. His voice was careful. "I didn't know Jesse Hartley. I didn't know he was going to be dead by noon. And when Voss closed the investigation, I thought—" Tom stopped. "I thought maybe I was making a connection that wasn't there." "Were you the only one who saw the wagon?" "Clara Finch was on her way to the county office when I passed her. She was on foot. She would have been on that road around the same time." Tom looked at Evelyn. "I don't know if she saw anything. We never talked about it." Evelyn stood up. "I need to speak with Clara Finch." "It's past 9 in the evening," Cole said. "Then I'll go in the morning." Cole stood as well. "Evelyn." She turned. "If Crow finds out you're asking these questions—" "He's already asking questions about me," she said. "Maggie told me tonight. He's been looking into my deed, asking whether it was recorded properly, whether Jesse left a will." She looked at Cole steadily. "He's not waiting for me to notice it him. He's already moving. That means I need to move faster. Cole held her gaze. Then I'm coming with you. No. She said it without hesitation. If I show up with you, it looks like I need protection. Clara Finch is more likely to talk to a woman alone than to a woman who arrived with Cole Bennett. Tom made a short sound that might have been approval. Cole looked like he wanted to argue. He didn't. All right, he said. Stop saying that. Stop being right, and I will. Clara Finch worked the front desk at the county land office, which meant she had access to every recorded deed in the territory and the specific kind of organizational memory that comes from handling paper all day. She was 35, thin-faced, quick-eyed, and she had the reputation of a woman who noticed everything and said only some of it. Evelyn arrived at the land office at 8 in the morning before the day's first real business and asked for Clara by name. Clara came out from the back looking alert and slightly guarded. "Miss Hartley," she said, "I heard you were working for Bennett." "I am. I also need to ask you something that has nothing to do with horses." Clara looked at the other clerk, a young man barely out of school, and said, "Go check the filing on the Morrison parcel." He went. Clara turned back to Evelyn. "Come to the back." The back room smelled of paper and ink and the particular staleness of a space that was never quite aired out. Clara sat on the edge of her desk and waited. "The morning my brother died," Evelyn said. "April 14th. You were on the East Road early." Clara's expression didn't change, but her hands resting on the desk beside her went very still. "Tom Aldridge saw you," Evelyn said. "I'm not here to cause you any trouble. I'm here because I think you saw something, and I think you've been sitting with it for 6 months, and it's been heavy." Clara looked at the wall. "What if I did see something?" she said. "What do I do with it?" "Voss closed the investigation. If I go to Voss and tell him I saw Crow's wagon on the East Road at 5 in the morning." "You don't go to Voss," Evelyn said. Clara looked at her sharply. "I think Voss is part of it," Evelyn said. "I don't have proof yet, but I think Crow and Voss have been working together, and I think whatever happened to my brother was not an accident, and I think you already believe that too." The silence stretched. "His wagon was stopped at the bottom of the trail," Clara said. Her voice was flat and controlled the voice of someone reciting facts to avoid feeling them. "Pete Morrow was on horseback. He came back down the trail about 15 minutes after I passed. He didn't see me. I was behind the alderman fence line, and it was still dark." She paused. "He was breathing hard, like a man who'd moved fast and uphill." Evelyn said nothing. She let the words sit. "I didn't know Jesse was dead until noon," Clara continued. "When I heard, I thought about what I'd seen, and I almost said something. And then Voss came in that afternoon to file the incident report, and he was so—" She stopped. "He was so settled about it, like it was already finished. And I thought, if I say something, what do I have? I saw a wagon. I saw a man come back downhill breathing hard. That's not evidence." "It's a witness statement," Evelyn said, "to what that Pete Morrow was on the East Road before sunrise." Clara shook her head. "Crow has 3 lawyers. If I accuse his man of something and I'm wrong, I lose this job. I lose everything. And if you're right and you stay quiet—" Clara looked at her. "They've already started asking about my deed," Evelyn said. "They're going after the property Jesse died to protect. If they succeed, everything he worked for disappears, and the people who made sure he wasn't around to stop them walk away clean." She held Clara's gaze. "I'm not asking you to stand up in court today. I'm asking you to tell me what you know, so that when the time comes, I have enough to make it worth your while to stand up." Clara was quiet for a long time. "There's something else," she said finally. Evelyn waited. "Crow's been in here 3 times this year, looking at deeds, not just yours. 3 other properties on that same stretch of land. The Kerrigan place, the McAllister quarter section, and the old Bauer homestead." She stood up and went to the filing cabinet, pulled a folder, and laid it on the desk. "All 3 have the same thing. A recorded deed with a minor error, a middle initial wrong, a surveying reference number that doesn't match the original plat. Small things. The kind of things that happen all the time and never matter." She looked at Evelyn. "Unless someone decides they matter." Evelyn looked at the folder. He's building cases against all of them, she said. I think so. How long has this been going on? The errors exist in documents going back to 1878. Clara paused. But Crow only started flagging them this spring, right after Jesse died. Evelyn looked up. Clara, did anyone else help Crow identify these documents? Someone who would know the land office records well enough to find these specific errors? Clara's mouth went tight. Deputy Voss has a key to this office, she said, for after-hours emergencies. She didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. Evelyn stood. Keep that folder where you can find it. What are you going to do? Find the proof that makes your witness statement enough. She moved toward the door and then stopped. One more thing. The deed for the Hartley property, Jesse recorded it in November of 1881. Is there anything unusual about it? Any of those small errors you mentioned? Clara had clearly already looked. No, she said. It's clean, perfectly recorded. She paused. Which is actually unusual for that period. Most deeds from that year have at least one clerical irregularity. Because Crow or Voss hadn't gotten to it yet. Or because Jesse was careful, Clara said quietly. More careful than most people would have been. Evelyn felt something tighten in her throat. She kept her face even. Thank you. She walked out of the land office into the morning and stood on the boardwalk for a moment with the sun coming at her from the east and the full weight of what she now knew settling across her shoulders. Jesse had been careful. Jesse had known something was wrong, and he had died before he could do anything about it. She did not go back to the ranch directly. She went to the feed store because she had legitimate business there and because she had learned from years of managing a small operation that the best time to think clearly is when your hands are occupied with something simple. She was checking the order against the ledger she'd brought when she heard Crow's voice behind her. She didn't turn. She kept her finger on the column of figures and finished the count before she looked up. Crow was standing in the doorway of the store, not looking at her or pretending not to be. He was speaking to the store owner, something about a freight shipment, easy and friendly. The manner of a man who spent a great deal of energy making himself seem easy and friendly. Then he looked over and saw her. His expression didn't flicker. That told her everything. A man who was surprised would flicker. Crow wasn't surprised. He'd known she was here. He walked over. Miss Hartley. Warm, unhurried. Settling in well at the Bennett place. Working, she said. Which is what I came here to do. Of course. He glanced at the ledger in her hands. Smart woman keeping your own records. You can't always trust other people's. The comment was so deliberately pointed that she almost responded to it. She caught herself. Nathan, she said pleasantly. What is it you actually want? His smile didn't change. I want to talk about your property. Then write me a letter. I'd rather do it face to face. These things go better that way. He lowered his voice just slightly, just enough to make the conversation feel private without being private. There's a question about the deed. Your brother recorded it, I know that. But there may be an issue with the original survey notation that could complicate things. I'm only telling you because I'd rather see it resolved quietly than see you get surprised by a legal challenge. How kind, Evelyn said. I'm a reasonable man. If there is a complication, there are ways to address it that work for everyone. He paused. I know you're in a precarious position financially. I could make an offer on the property that would leave you comfortable, more than comfortable. And dusty, she said. He blinked. You offered $10 for my horse a few weeks ago, she said. I turned that down. You're standing here now with a bigger number. I turned that down the moment you started talking. She closed the ledger. I'm going to keep doing that. Crow was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, the warmth was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Miss Hartley, I respect your determination, but I want you to understand that if this goes through a legal process, it's going to take time and money you don't have, and it's going to end the same way. He held her gaze. I'm trying to save you the difficulty. No, she said. You're trying to keep me from finding out how the difficulty started, for a fraction of a second. One fraction fast enough that if she'd blinked, she would have missed it. Something moved in Crow's eyes. Not surprise. Something colder. Then it was gone, and the smile was back. "I'll write you that letter," he said, and walked away. Evelyn stood with the ledger in her hands, and her heart beat steady and deliberate, and she did not watch him go, because watching him go would mean letting him have the last look. She paid for the order, went to her horse, and rode back to the ranch. Cole was at the gate when she arrived. He had the look of a man who had been waiting without admitting he was waiting. "Well," he said, "I talked to Clara. I ran into Crow." She dismounted. "He offered to buy the property. He's already built a pretextual case around a supposed deed irregularity." "Is there one?" "Clara says no. The deed is clean." She handed him the reins. "He's doing the same thing to 3 other properties on this stretch. Kerrigan, McAllister, Bauer." Cole's expression went dark. "How long?" "The setup goes back years. The active move started this spring." She held his gaze. "Cole. Pete Morrow was on the upper trail the morning Jesse died. Clara saw him come back down." The silence was total. "Clara saw Crow's wagon." Evelyn continued. "Morrow went up the trail in the dark and came back breathing hard. Jesse went up that trail an hour later and never came back." She kept her voice flat, because flat was the only way she could say it without it breaking. Jesse knew something was wrong with these deeds. He was careful enough that his own was recorded perfectly. That made him a problem. Cole set his hand on Dusty's shoulder, not looking at the horse, just needing something solid under his palm. "Voss," he said, "has a key to the land office. Is the one who closed Jesse's investigation. Is the one who told you Crow's visit was routine." She paused. "They're working together. I don't know for how long, but I know it's long enough that they've built an entire operation around it." Cole looked at her. "We need a lawyer. We need more than a lawyer," she said. "We need the proof that makes a lawyer dangerous. Right now, we have a witness who's afraid of missing page and a pattern that looks like conspiracy, but that Crow could explain away in court in 20 minutes. Then what do we do?" Evelyn looked at him steadily. "Crow wants this land because there's something on it he needs. Not the horses, not the grazing rights. Something specific." She thought about the breeding ledger, about the stallion Jesse had bought, about the date. "Cole, the stallion Jesse bought from you in September of 1881. Did Jesse ever mention why he wanted that specific animal?" Cole thought. "He said something about improving the line. Standard enough reason. Was it?" Cole paused. "The stallion wasn't a breed that matched what Jesse already had. I remember thinking it was an odd choice. But Jesse paid well, and I didn't press it." "What if the horse wasn't the point?" Evelyn said. "What if the transaction was the point? What if Jesse needed to establish a documented connection between his property and yours, a paper trail that would hold up against a legal challenge, and buying that stallion was the way he did it?" Cole stared at her. "If Jesse suspected someone was building a case against his deed," she continued, "a purchase from an established neighboring ranch creates a secondary record of legitimate operation. It's not a deed, but it's evidence that he was functioning as a recognized landowner at a time when someone might later claim he wasn't." She paused. "And Crow came to your ranch 2 months later and removed that record." Cole sat down on the fence rail. He looked like a man who had just watched the whole shape of a thing rearrange itself into something worse than he'd imagined. "Jesse knew," Cole said. "Jesse knew. And Crow found out that Jesse knew. Which means Jesse was killed not because he stood in the way of the land scheme." Evelyn looked at him. "He was killed because he was smart enough to build a defense against it. And they couldn't allow a defense to exist." Cole stood up. "Then the proof we need is the proof Jesse was already building," she said. "Which means somewhere in that property, in whatever Jesse kept, there's something he put together before he died." She straightened. "And I need to go home and find it. Tonight? Tomorrow morning." She looked at him. "And Cole, don't tell Tom where I'm going. Don't tell anyone." "Why?" "Because Crow found out I was at the feed store this morning before I'd been there 20 minutes. She held his gaze. "Someone on this property told him." Cole went very still. Evelyn took Dusty's reins back from him and led the horse toward the barn, and the evening settled in around the ranch with the specific deceptive quiet of a place where nothing appears to be wrong. She knew better. So did Jesse's memory, somewhere under the floorboards of a property that two men had already killed to own. She left before dawn. Not because she was afraid of being followed, though she was, but because the Hartley property had always been at its most honest in the dark, when the sounds were just wind and horses and the particular silence of a place that remembered who had built it. Evelyn rode, Dusty hard on the back trail, the one that came in from the south, and avoided the east road entirely. She had ridden it enough times in the last 6 months that her body knew the turns before her eyes did. Dusty knew them too. He moved without being asked, and she let him, and she spent the 40 minutes of riding going through everything she knew in order the way Jesse had taught her to go through a problem, not looking for the answer, but looking for the shape of it. Jesse had known something was wrong with the deeds along their stretch of land. He had been careful enough to record his own deed perfectly, and smart enough to create a secondary paper trail through a horse purchase from Cole's ranch. He had done both of those things in the fall of 1881. By April, he was dead, and Nathan Crow had been moving on the surrounding properties ever since, with Deputy Voss clearing the path. The shape of it was clear enough. What she didn't have yet was the thing Jesse had left behind, because Jesse had left something behind. She was certain of it. Her brother had been meticulous in the way of a man who had learned early that the world would not take his word for things, and who had therefore learned to put everything in writing. He kept records the way other men kept cattle, carefully, with an eye toward the future, with the understanding that what you documented today might be the only thing standing between you and someone else's version of the truth. She dismounted at the back fence, tied Dusty to the post, and went inside. The house was exactly as she had left it 2 weeks ago, when she'd moved to the Bennett ranch for the duration of the work arrangement. She had not taken much. She had not expected to be gone long. She went to Jesse's room first, not because she expected to find something obvious. She had been through the room after he died, carefully looking for a will or final instructions, and found nothing unusual. But she was looking differently now. She was not looking for a document. She was looking for a hiding place. Jesse had been 12 years old when their father showed him how to build a false bottom into the grain storage box in the barn. Their father had explained in the plain way. He explained everything, that the world was full of people who wanted what other people had built, and that a man who kept nothing hidden had nothing protected. Jesse had never forgotten a thing their father said. Evelyn pulled the bed away from the wall. Nothing beneath the floorboards. She checked every plank, pressing each one with her heel, listening for the give that would mean hollow space. Nothing. She went to the wardrobe, checked the back panel, the base, the top. Nothing. She went to his desk. Jesse's desk was a heavy oak piece he'd bought from a man passing through in 1880, and he had loved it with the specific devotion that practical men reserve for tools that work exactly as intended. The surface was clear. She'd cleared it herself in the weeks after his death. But the desk had 6 drawers, and she went through each one, not just pulling them out and looking in, but pulling them all the way out, checking behind them, checking the frame. The 5th drawer had a false back. Not elaborate. Just a piece of fitted wood, set an inch behind the real back of the drawer, with enough space to hold a folded envelope flat against the inside of the desk frame. She pried it loose with her thumbnail, and the envelope came free, and she sat on the edge of Jesse's bed and opened it with hands that were very steady, because she would not let them be anything else. Inside were 4 sheets of paper folded together, covered in Jesse's handwriting. She read them twice before she moved. The first sheet was a list of property transactions dating back to 1878. 7 properties total, all within 15 miles of her family's land. Each one showed a sequence: a minor deed irregularity, a legal challenge filed through a Tucson law firm, and a final transfer of ownership in every case to a landholding company called Meridian Property Associates. The prices paid were all below market value, in 3 cases dramatically so. The second sheet was a hand-drawn map of the land corridor running from the southern edge of the Bennett Ranch to the Kerrigan property in the north. Jesse had marked water sources, trail access points, and a proposed railway survey line in red ink. The survey line ran directly through the center of the corridor. through Evelyn's land, through the Bennett ranch, through every property that Crow had been targeting. The third sheet was a letter, not addressed to anyone, a draft possibly, or a record of a conversation. In Jesse's handwriting, it described a meeting he had witnessed between Nathan Crow and a man named Elias Drummond in the fall of 1880. Drummond Jesse had written represented the Arizona and Pacific Railroad Development Authority. The meeting had been about land acquisition, specifically about acquiring the corridor properties before the railway survey became public knowledge. The fourth sheet was the most important. It was a signed statement from a man named Bernard Kerrigan, the same Kerrigan whose property Clara had identified as one of Crow's targets. The statement said that in the spring of 1882, Crow had offered to purchase the Kerrigan land, and when Kerrigan refused, Deputy Voss had appeared within the week with documentation of a supposed deed defect and a notice of potential legal proceedings. The statement said Kerrigan had eventually sold under duress. The statement was dated March of this year, 1 month before Jesse died. Jesse had found Bernard Kerrigan. Jesse had gotten a signed statement. And then, Jesse had died. Evelyn folded the papers back into the envelope, put the envelope inside her coat, and sat very still on her dead brother's bed for exactly 30 seconds. 30 seconds to feel the full weight of what she was holding. 30 seconds to understand that her brother had not died by accident, had not died from a spooked horse on a clear morning, had been killed because he had built exactly the kind of case that could have stopped all of it, and someone had found out. Then she stood up, walked out of the house, untied Dusty, and rode. She came back to the Bennett ranch before noon and went directly to Cole. She did not soften it. She put Jesse's papers on the desk in front of him and stood back and let him read. She watched his face as he went through each sheet. When he finished, he set the papers down and looked at her, and what was in his face was not surprise. It was the expression of a man who has just had a suspicion he was afraid to fully form, confirmed in every particular. "The railway," he said. "They've known about the survey for years," Evelyn said. "The land corridor through here is worth 20 times what Crow has been paying for these properties. Maybe more once the line is confirmed." She paused. "Jesse found it in 1880. He spent 2 years building documentation. He got Kerrigan's statement in March, and in April, someone found out he had it." Cole stood up. "Pete Morrow was on that trail." "Yes." "And Voss closed the investigation before anyone could look at it properly." "Yes." Cole put his hand on the desk. "Bernard Kerrigan, is he still?" "I don't know. His statement is dated March of this year. If Crow knows Jesse spoke to him." They looked at each other. "I need to find Kerrigan," Evelyn said. "Today." "The Kerrigan property is sold. You said Clara confirmed it. Sold doesn't mean gone. He might still be in the county." She picked up the papers and put them back in her coat. "I'm going to the land office. Clara can tell me where the transfer documents list as Kerrigan's forwarding address." Cole moved toward the door. "I'm coming this time," he said. "Before you say no, Crow already knows you're asking questions. Riding into town alone a second time today is not caution, it's stubbornness." She almost refused on principle. Then she thought about Pete Morrow coming back down a trail in the dark, breathing hard. "Fine," she said, "but you don't speak for me." "When have I ever spoken for you?" "You have the look of a man who might start." He picked up his hat. "I have the look of a man who's trying to keep up. There's a difference." They were halfway to town when Tom Aldridge caught up to them. He was riding hard, which Evelyn had never seen him do, and the expression on his face was the expression of a man who has just made a decision he'd been postponing for too long. Cole pulled up. "Tom, Crow's man was at the ranch," Tom said, not wasting breath on preamble. "Pete Morrow. He came to the front gate 20 minutes after you left and asked for Miss Hartley. I said she wasn't there." He looked at Evelyn. "He left, but he went east, not back toward town." "East, toward the Hartley property." Evelyn felt the cold clarity of it move through her. Without shock, she had been half expecting something like this since the moment she'd found the envelope. What she hadn't expected was how fast. "The papers," Cole said, looking at her. "I have them. They're in my coat." She thought fast. If Morrow goes to the property and finds the hiding place empty, he'll know you found them, Tom said. He'll know, and he'll tell Crow, and Crow will stop waiting for the legal approach. She looked at Cole. We don't have days to build this case. We have hours. Tom said, then go faster. Clara Finch had Kerrigan's forwarding address in under 3 minutes, a boarding house in Benson 40 miles south. A long ride, but not impossible. While Evelyn was inside the land office, Cole stood at the door and watched the street. He saw Deputy Voss come out of the saloon across the road and stop on the boardwalk and look directly at him. Not the casual glance of a man noticing a neighbor. A long, deliberate look. Cole held it. Voss turned and went back inside. When Evelyn came out, Cole said nothing about it until they were moving. Voss just made us, he said. Evelyn kept writing. How long do we have before he talks to Crow? He's probably already talking, she thought. Clara had Kerrigan's address. If Crow reached Kerrigan before they did, the signed statement could be challenged, recanted, or worse. And Kerrigan himself was at risk. He had already sold under duress, which meant he had already demonstrated he could be pressured. I can't ride to Benson and back in time to matter, she said. I need someone already in Benson. Who do you know in Benson? She looked at him. Maggie Wells's sister, Ellen. She and her husband run a boarding house. She paused. The same boarding house. Cole looked at her. Maggie has a telegraph account at the Benson station from when her husband was alive, Evelyn said. If we can get a message to her sister before Crow reaches Benson. The telegraph office is on Main Street. Then we go to Main Street. They went. The message was 12 words. Ellen, find Bernard Kerrigan. Your house, keep him there. Maggie will explain. Evelyn paid for it herself over Cole's objection because it felt important. Then she stopped outside the telegraph office and turned to Cole with the specific manner of someone who has been pushing forward and has hit the point where pushing forward requires something they haven't yet done. I need you to tell me the truth about something, she said. Cole waited. The informant. Someone on your ranch told Crow I was at the feed store this morning. She kept her eyes on his. You said nothing to Tom about where I was going. Who else knew? Cole was quiet for a moment. The Price brothers saw you leave. They're 22 years old and they grew up in this county. I know. Do you know which one? He looked at her. The younger one, Danny. He's been spending money he shouldn't have. He said it the way a man says something he's been knowing for a while and not wanting to act on. I noticed 2 weeks ago. I didn't want to assume. You should have assumed. Yes, he said. I should have. Is he on the property now? He should be. Then we go back and we don't tell him anything, but we tell him something wrong. She held his gaze. If Crow acts on the wrong information, we know for certain it's Danny, and we can use that. Cole looked at her for a long moment. What kind of wrong information? Tell him I found something at the Hartley property, a document hidden in the barn. Tell him I'm taking it to Judge Peters in Tucson tomorrow morning. She paused. Crow will move tonight, and when he moves, we'll be ready. That puts you in the middle of it, Cole said. His voice didn't change, but something in it tightened. I'm already in the middle of it, she said. Jesse put me in the middle of it the moment he started building this case, and the moment they decided to make sure he couldn't finish it. She kept her voice even. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you the plan. A beat. All right, he said. Good. They rode back. Danny Price was in the paddock when they returned. He was 18, tow-headed, with the eager face of a young man who had not yet learned how to stop his thoughts from reaching his expression. He looked at Evelyn when she came through the gate with the careful, studied disinterest of someone who was very interested. She went to Cole close enough that Danny could hear if he was paying attention. I found what I was looking for, she said just under full volume. It was in the barn, not the house. I've got everything I need to take to Peters. Cole nodded. When? Tomorrow morning, early. She walked past Danny to the barn without looking at him. Inside, Tom was oiling a bridle. She came in and crouched beside him and spoke quietly. "Watch Danny tonight," she said. "Don't let him know you're watching. But if he leaves the property or sends anyone out, I need to know immediately." Tom looked at her without surprise. "How long have you known?" "Since this morning." "I've known for a week," Tom said. "I was waiting to be sure." "You should have said something." He looked at her with the absolute steadiness of a man in his 60s who has made his share of mistakes. "Yes," he said. "I should have." She stood up. "We're square." He nodded. She went back to the house. Cole found her an hour later at the kitchen table with Jesse's papers spread in front of her, making copies in her own hand, one full duplicate set, every word, every date, every name. "What are you doing?" he said. "Making sure that if Crow takes the originals, the information survives." Cole sat down. He watched her write for a moment. "You're going to send the copies somewhere." "Maggie, she'll hold them." Evelyn kept writing. "The originals go to Henry Foss in Tucson." The lawyer. "The only honest one I know of in 100 miles." She paused. "Clara gave me his name. She said he's handled 2 cases against Crow's sort of operation before. He'll know what to do with this." Cole was quiet for a moment. She kept writing. "Evelyn." His voice was different, quieter. She looked up. "I owe you something," he said. "You don't." "Not money. An explanation." He put his hands flat on the table. "When Jesse came to buy that stallion, we talked for a while. Long enough that I knew he was a man worth knowing. And when I heard he died, I should have looked into it. I knew Crow's name by then. I knew something about the pattern. And I chose to believe Voss's explanation, because looking into it meant getting into something I wasn't sure I wanted to be in the middle of." He met her eyes. "I didn't know what it would cost, but not knowing doesn't make the choice right." Evelyn set the pen down. She looked at him for a long moment, at the steadiness of him, the particular kind of honest that doesn't try to make itself comfortable, doesn't dress itself up or reach for sympathy. "You're in the middle of it now," she said. "Yes." "Then that's where we start from." He nodded. She picked the pen back up. They sat in silence for a while, her writing, and him thinking, the lamp between them, throwing a warm and steady light over Jesse's words. Every careful, meticulous, brave word, and the copies that Evelyn was making to ensure that what her brother had built with his life would not disappear the way they'd tried to make him disappear. At 9 o'clock, Tom knocked on the door. "Danny left," he said. 40 minutes ago. Went north." North was toward town. North was toward Crow. Cole looked at Evelyn. She set the pen down carefully and put the original papers back in the envelope and the envelope inside her coat. "Then it's tonight," she said. Tom looked at her. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing yet. I need you at the front gate before dawn. If anyone comes onto this property who isn't invited, I need to know before they reach the house." She paused. "And Tom?" "What?" "Don't let Cole go after anyone alone." Tom looked at Cole. Cole looked at Evelyn. "I don't need," Cole started. "I know you don't need it. I need it." She held his gaze. "This doesn't end tonight by someone getting hurt. It ends in front of a judge with witnesses and documentation and the full weight of what Jesse spent 2 years building." She picked up the copied pages. "That's how it ends. Not any other way." Cole held her gaze for a long moment. Then something in his face settled. Not defeat, not concession, but the particular quiet of a man who has just recognized someone worth listening to. "All right," he said. She rolled the copies and tied them with a piece of string. "Send someone to Maggie tonight with these," she said. "Someone you trust completely." "Walt," Cole said immediately. "The cook. He's ridden that trail to Maggie's 100 times and he doesn't gossip." "Good." She handed him the roll. "Tell him to give it to Maggie directly, and to nobody else, and to say one thing: the real ones go to Foss in the morning." She stood. "Now," she said, "we wait." Cole stood as well. He moved toward the window, then stopped. "The railway line," he said without turning. "If Jesse's map is accurate, if the survey runs through here the way he marked it, it changes everything, Evelyn said. Every property along that corridor becomes worth 10 times what Crow has been paying. She paused. And every property Crow has already taken becomes worth 10 times what he stole it for. Cole turned around. Which means Kerrigan. Kerrigan and every other family Crow pressured into selling, they lost not just their land, but a fortune they never knew they had. She looked at him steadily. That's what Jesse was trying to stop. That's what he died for. Cole stood with that for a moment. Outside the territory was quiet, in the way it gets just before something breaks too still. The horses in the paddock standing alert, no wind. He was a good man, Cole said quietly. Yes, Evelyn said. He was. She went to the window and looked out at the dark, and she thought about Jesse on a clear April morning riding up a trail he knew better than his own hands, riding toward a death that had been arranged by men who could not afford to let honesty survive. She thought about the envelope against her chest. She thought about what came next. Whatever. Crow sent tonight. Morrow Voss, someone she hadn't met yet. They were going to find out that Jesse Hartley had not built his case alone. He had left it to someone, and she was still here, and she was not afraid of any of them. The horses shifted in the paddock. Somewhere in the dark, a rider was coming. They heard him before they saw him. One horse coming in from the north, at a pace that was trying to be quiet and failing the specific sound of an animal being held back from its natural gait, which is louder in its irregularity than a horse simply allowed to run. Tom was at the front gate. He came to the house in under a minute. One rider, he said. Not Morrow. Lighter horse, shorter stride, coming in from the Miller Road. Evelyn was already at the window. Danny. Coming back, Cole said. Or coming to check what we did after he left. She turned to Tom. Let him in. Don't say anything about where we are. Just let him come to the barn. Tom went back out. Cole looked at her. You want him to think the house is empty. I want him to show me what he does when he thinks no one is watching. They waited. Danny Price came through the gate, tied his horse, and went directly to the barn. Not to the bunkhouse. Not to find Tom. Straight to the barn, and once inside, he went to the corner where Evelyn had been working on the roan's feed schedule, and he stood there and looked at the work table for a long moment. Then he went to the tack box and opened it. He's looking for the papers, Cole said very quietly. Crow told him what to find. Danny searched the tack box, found nothing moved to the saddle rack, checked the saddlebags on Evelyn's rig, with the quick practiced efficiency of someone who'd been given specific instructions. When he came up empty, he stood still in the middle of the barn with the particular stillness of a young man who has realized he is in a situation that has gone further than he intended and does not know how to get back. Evelyn walked in. Danny spun around. She looked at him with an expression that was not angry, not cold, just direct the way you look at someone when you want them to understand that you see exactly what they are. What were you looking for? She said. Miss Hartley. His voice cracked on the second word. I needed a... Danny. She kept her voice even. I know you've been talking to Crow. I know you told him I was at the feed store this morning. And I know he sent you here tonight to find the papers he thinks I brought back from my property. She paused. I'm not going to drag this out. I just want to know one thing. He stared at her. His face was the face of a boy who had made an adult mistake and was only now understanding the full weight of it. Did he threaten you? She said. Or did he pay you? A long silence. Both, Danny said. She looked at him steadily. How long? 3 months. He looked at the ground. He came to me in May. Said he needed someone on the inside who could keep him informed. Said it was just information, nothing that would hurt anyone. He swallowed. I needed the money. My mother's sick. He stopped. I know it doesn't make it. No, Evelyn said. It doesn't. She looked at him for another moment. But it changes what happens next. She stepped closer. You're going to go to your bunk right now. You're going to stay there until morning. And in the morning, you're going to tell Cole everything Crow asked you and everything you told him. Every conversation, every detail. Danny looked up. And then, and then we'll decide." He looked at Cole, who had appeared in the barn doorway. Cole's expression was the particular expression of a man who has been disappointed, but who has not yet decided what to do with the disappointment. Not cruel, not forgiving, just watching. "Go," Cole said. Danny went. They stood in the barn after he left, and the silence was the specific kind that follows a confrontation, not empty, but full of everything that had just been said, and everything it changed. "Crow knows I found the papers," Evelyn said. "Danny told him I was at the property this morning. Crow sent him to confirm I brought something back. When Danny comes up empty and reports in, Crow will know you have them and that you're moving on them." Cole looked at her. "He'll move tonight. Not on this property," she said. "He doesn't want a confrontation here, too many witnesses. He'll try something cleaner." She thought. "He'll go for the lawyer. If he can get to Henry Foss before I do." "Walt left 2 hours ago with the copies," Cole said. "Maggie has them. But the originals are still here, with me." She pressed her hand against her coat. "Foss won't have anything to take to the court without the originals. Copies can be challenged. Then Foss needs the originals tonight." She looked at him. "Tucson is 4 hours." "I know. If I leave now." "If we leave now," Cole said, "we get there before dawn. Foss opens his office at 7. We'll be on his doorstep when he arrives." She almost said she could go alone. She looked at him and saw that he knew she was about to say it and that he had his response ready, and she decided to skip the round. "We need someone on this property who can handle whatever Crow sends tonight," she said. "Tom," Cole said immediately. "And Walt's back by midnight." He paused. "Tom's handled worse than Pete Morrow." She thought about Tom Aldridge, the decades of him, the particular solidity of a man who had stayed in one place long enough to know exactly what he was. "Tell him everything," she said. Cole was already moving. They were on the road within 20 minutes. The territory at night was a different country, wider, colder, the stars close and unhelpful. Dusty and Cole's Bay moved at a sustained trot that 8 miles without drama, and Evelyn used the time the way she'd been using time all day, thinking forward. Henry Foss. She knew the name from Clara, knew the reputation from 3 separate people who had mentioned him in separate contexts over the past year, always with the same 2 words, honest and stubborn. In a territory where the legal system was as subject to purchase as anything else, those 2 words together were rarer than they sounded. "You've met Foss?" she asked Cole. "Once. 3 years ago. Property dispute with a neighbor, minor thing resolved quickly. He's not a man who makes speeches, he just works." He paused. "He won't be happy about the hour." "No. He'll listen anyway." "I know." They rode in silence for a while. The road curved south, then straightened, and the lights of Tucson appeared on the horizon like something cautious and far away. "Cole." She didn't look at him. "When this is over, and I mean when Foss has the papers and the case is filed, and there's enough in motion that Crow can't simply make it disappear, I need you to tell me what you want." He glanced at her. "What I want. With the arrangement, the work. Whether you want it to continue, or whether—" She paused. "I'm not assuming anything. I'm asking because I've been on your property for 3 weeks, and I've been operating like someone who plans to stay, and I'd rather know now if that's wrong." He was quiet for a moment. "I put a proper fence post on the north corner the day after you pointed out it was leaning," he said. "I put it there because I was thinking about whether the property would look right to someone who lived there." He paused. "Does that answer your question?" She looked at the road ahead. "It answers one of them," she said. "What's the other?" "I'll ask it when the rest of this is finished," she said. "When I'm not asking it in the middle of riding through the dark to keep my dead brother's work from being swallowed up by the men who killed him." "Fair," he said. "I know." Henry Foss was a compact, gray-haired man of 55 who answered his door at 5:40 in the morning in a state of complete alertness that suggested he had either been awake or had the ability to become awake instantaneously with no intermediate stage. He looked at Evelyn, looked at Cole, looked at the envelope in Evelyn's hand. "Come in," he said. He read Jesse's papers at his desk with a cup of coffee he did not drink and an expression that moved through several phases. Attention recognition, something that in a less contained man might have been outrage, and arrived at a focused calm that Evelyn recognized as the expression of a man who has found the thing he's been looking for without knowing he was looking for it. "Bernard Kerrigan," he said, setting the statement down. "I've been trying to find Kerrigan for 4 months." Evelyn sat forward. "Why?" "Because 2 other families came to me in June with similar stories. The Bowers and a widow named Halloran. Both sold under pressure, both suspected the deed challenges were manufactured, neither had enough to act on." He looked at her. "Your brother's map of the railway survey line. How did he obtain this?" "He witnessed a meeting. Crow and a man named Elias Drummond from the Arizona and Pacific Railroad Development Authority." Foss nodded slowly. "Drummond. I know that name." He paused. "The railway survey is not public record. It won't be for another 8 months. The moment it becomes public, every parcel along that corridor increases in value by conservatively 800%. The number sat in the room. "And Crow has been buying those parcels," Cole said. "At roughly 8% of what they'll be worth," Foss said. "Yes." He looked at the papers again. "With Kerrigan's statement, your brother's documentation, and the witness testimony, you mentioned Clara Finch and Tom Aldridge. This is sufficient to file." He looked up at Evelyn. "It's also sufficient to warrant criminal charges, not just against Crow, against Voss." "And Morrow," Evelyn said. "Pete Morrow was on that trail. Morrow is the variable." Foss set his coffee cup down. "We can place him at the location. Clara Finch's testimony does that. But placing him there is not the same as proving what he did." He looked at her steadily. "Unless Bernard Kerrigan knows more than he wrote in that statement." Evelyn looked at the wall. "Jesse trusted Kerrigan enough to get a signed statement," she said. "Which means Jesse told him things. Things he might not have put in the statement because he was protecting Kerrigan's safety." She looked at Foss. "If Kerrigan knows what Jesse knew about Morrow, then we have everything," Foss said. "Ellen Wells is keeping Kerrigan at the boarding house in Benson," she said. "I sent a message last night." Foss stood up. "Then I need to be in Benson by noon." He looked at them. "Can you be in Judge Peters' courtroom the day after tomorrow?" "Yes," Evelyn said. Cole looked at her. "Evelyn." "Yes," she said again to Foss. "Whatever day, whatever time." Foss picked up the papers. "I'll need to retain these. I'll give you a signed receipt for each document." He looked at her over the top of his glasses. "Miss Hartley, your brother built a very complete case." "I know," she said. "He knew they'd come for it." "I know that too." Foss held her gaze. "He built it expecting someone would have to finish it for him." The words were precise and quiet, and they landed exactly where they were meant to. "Yes," Evelyn said. "He did." They left Foss's office at 6:30 and stood on the Tucson boardwalk while the town came alive around them, slow, incremental, the way mornings come, in places where people have learned not to rush. Cole stood beside her. Not close enough to press, just close enough to be present. "You should sleep," he said. "I should ride back and find out what happened at the ranch last night." "Also true." She looked at him. In the early light, he looked tired and honest, and like someone she had known for considerably longer than 3 weeks, which was both accurate and not accurate at the same time, and she was not going to think about that right now. "Foss said the day after tomorrow," she said. 2 days. "Crow will know by tonight that I went to Foss. Danny will tell him. Morrow will go back to the property and find nothing and report that too." She thought it through. "He'll try to move the case before Peters's court date. File something preemptive. A counterclaim, a challenge to the documents." "Can he do that in 2 days?" "He can try, but Foss is already filing." She paused. "The filing is public record. Once it's in, Crow can't make it disappear. Then we need to make sure Foss files today. He's writing to Benson today. If Kerrigan confirms, he'll file today," Cole said. "Yes." They looked at each other. "Then we go home," Cole said. "And we wait. and we trust that your brother built it right." She looked at him. "I know he did." "I know you know," Cole said. "I'm saying it anyway, because sometimes it helps to hear it from someone else." She held his gaze for a moment. "It does," she said. "A little." They arrived back at the ranch at mid-morning to find Tom at the front gate with the expression of a man who had been awake all night and had made it count. "Morrow came," Tom said before either of them could ask. "Around midnight. Not to the gate, went around the south fence. I was waiting." He paused. "He found the barn locked and the house dark and spent 40 minutes looking for a way in that didn't make noise." "Did he find one?" Cole said. "No, because I was in the barn and Walt was at the house and neither of us is easy to get past." Tom looked at Evelyn. "He left empty-handed, but he took the saddlebags off your spare horse and went through them. There was nothing in them." "I know that now." Evelyn looked at Tom steadily. "Thank you." He nodded. Once brief, the way Tom Aldridge did everything. "Danny's still in this bunkhouse," Tom added. "Hasn't come out. Walt brought him breakfast. He ate it." He paused. "Kid's scared." "He should be," Cole said. "He should be," Tom agreed. "But scared doesn't mean bad. In my experience, scared usually means the person still knows the difference between right and wrong and is currently thinking hard about which side they landed on." Evelyn looked at the bunkhouse. "I'll talk to him," she said. Cole glanced at her. "I'll talk to him," she said again. Cole stopped. Danny Price was sitting on his bunk with his hands between his knees when she came in. He looked up and then looked back at the floor, which was the look of someone who has decided that eye contact is more than they can manage. She sat on the empty bunk across from him. "Tell me everything Crow asked you," she said. "Everything you reported. Start from May." It took him 40 minutes. How was thorough? Because fear makes people thorough. And he was young enough that he hadn't yet learned to edit strategically. He told her every conversation, every specific question Crow had asked, every piece of information he had passed back. By the end, she had confirmed everything she suspected about the timeline, how Crow had moved immediately after Jesse died, how he'd placed Danny on the ranch within weeks of Evelyn accepting Cole's offer, how completely he had predicted her every move except one. "He didn't expect you to find the papers," Danny said. "When I told him you went to the property in the morning, he wasn't angry, he was frightened." He paused. "I'd never seen him frightened before. He hid it fast, but I saw it." Evelyn looked at him. Because he knew Jesse had built a case. He just didn't know Jesse had hidden it well enough that his people couldn't find it. Danny looked at her. "Are you going to tell the law about me?" "That depends on what you do next," she said. He met her eyes for the first time. "What do I need to do?" "Write down everything you just told me. Signed. Dated." She paused. "And then you go to Henry Foss in Tucson, and you say it to his face. Crow is going to have enough trouble keeping himself out of prison without spending energy on a scared 18-year-old who cooperated." She kept her voice flat and honest. "You're not the target. You never were. You're the evidence." He stared at her. "I'm giving you a way out," she said. "But it only works if you take it today. Not tomorrow. Today." He nodded. She left him with paper and a pen. By late afternoon, everything was in motion. Danny had left for Tucson with his written statement tucked in his shirt. Walt had confirmed the copies were with Maggie. Foss had sent a message 8 words arrived by courier from the Benson relay that said Kerrigan confirmed. "More than we expected. Filing today. More than we expected." Evelyn read those 4 words 3 times. She found Cole in this paddock working the gray, still working him patient as always, the horse responding now with the settled confidence of an animal that had learned to trust the person on the other end of the line. "Foss filed," she said. Cole brought the horse to a stop. "Kerrigan. Confirmed everything, and apparently more." She held out the message. Cole read it. "More than we expected." He looked up. "What did Jesse find that wasn't in the papers?" "I think Kerrigan knows what happened on that trail," she said. "I think Jesse told him." or showed him something. She paused. We'll know when Foss tells us. Cole looked at her across the fence. It's almost over. The day after tomorrow is court, she said. It's not over until Crow and Voss are standing in front of Peter's and can't buy their way out of it. And Morrow. And Morrow. He set the lead line down. He came to the fence and leaned on it close enough that she could see the tiredness in his face that he had been carrying all day without acknowledging. The question you said you'd ask when this was finished, he said. She looked at him. We're close enough, he said. Ask it. She was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to stay because the ranch needs someone who can work horses, she said. Or for a reason that has nothing to do with the horses? He held her gaze without flinching. The ranch has been fine with horses for 11 years. That's not an answer. No, he said. It isn't. He pushed off the fence and stood up straight. I want you to stay because I haven't slept properly since you moved in. Not because the work is hard, but because I am aware every hour I'm in that house that you're in it too. And I have been trying to be decent about that awareness, because you came here to work and you had enough to manage without me adding to it. He paused. That's the reason. It has nothing to do with the horses. The gray shuffled behind him. Evelyn looked at Cole Bennett at the 11 years of solitude on his face, at the specific courage of a man who has just said a true thing out loud, without decoration. And she thought about Jesse, about Dusty, about a $10 sign, and a morning that had been the worst morning of her adult life, and had somehow brought her here. I'm not going anywhere, she said. He looked at her. Not because you asked, she said. Because I decided. She held his gaze. There's a difference. I know the difference, he said. Good. She turned back toward the house. Evelyn. She stopped. The other question, the one you said you'd ask. That was it. She glanced back over her shoulder. That was the important one, she said. The other question can wait until after court. He looked at her steadily, and the corner of his mouth moved in a way that she had begun to understand was as close to a full smile as Cole Bennett got in an unguarded moment. 2 days, he said. 2 days, she agreed and walked inside. That night, neither of them slept well. Not because of Crow, not because of what was coming, but because the house had settled into a particular kind of quiet that comes when something large and unspoken has been named, and the air hasn't finished adjusting to the shape of it yet. Evelyn lay in the small room off the kitchen and listened to the horses in the paddock and thought about Jesse. Not about how he died, about how he had lived, about the way he'd sat across from her at that kitchen table in their family's house, reading by lamplight, patient and certain and steady in the way of someone who believes that the truth, given enough time and careful documentation, will eventually stand up on its own. She thought he had been right. She thought he had not been wrong about anything. Not the railway, not the deed, not Crow, not the case. He'd been building piece by careful piece. The only thing Jesse had underestimated was how far Crow was willing to go. And even then, he had planned for it. He had hidden the papers. He had built the false bottom. He had gotten Kerrigan's statement and written the meeting notes and drawn the map and put everything together in an envelope that no one found because no one thought to look in the desk in the drawer behind the false back. No one except Evelyn. Because Jesse had known she would look. Because Jesse had known her. She pressed her hand flat against the mattress and felt the solid, indifferent weight of the world beneath it. And she said very quietly to the dark room, I found it, Jesse. The horses shifted outside. The night held still. In the morning, one day before the court date, a second message arrived from Foss, longer this time, detailed, written in the tight, economical hand of a man who had not been to bed. Evelyn read it at the kitchen table with Cole standing behind her and Tom in the doorway with his coffee. Kerrigan had told Foss everything. He had told Foss that Jesse had witnessed more than a meeting. Jesse had followed Morrow on the morning of April 14th. Jesse had seen Morrow on the trail, had confronted him, and Kerrigan knew this because Jesse had come to him the night of April 13th, the night before he died, and told him where he was going and why and what to do if he didn't come back. Jesse had known. He had gone up that trail knowing exactly what he might find, and he had gone anyway because the alternative was letting Crow's men clear the path in the dark without a witness. He had gone to be a witness. Tom made a sound in the doorway that was not a word. Cole's hand came to rest on Evelyn's shoulder, not pressing, not directing, just there, solid and warm, and present the way you put your hand on a fence post to check if it's set right and find that it is. Evelyn set the letter down. "He knew," she said. "He knew," Cole said. "Then let's make sure it counted," she said, and stood up. Judge Peters's courtroom held 40 people comfortably and 60 with difficulty, and by 8 o'clock on the morning of the hearing, it held nearly 80. Evelyn noticed that before she noticed anything else. Not the judge's bench, not the gallery seating, not Crow already positioned at the defendant's table with 2 lawyers flanking him like men paid to look unworried. She noticed the people. Farmers and shopkeepers, and ranch hands and women who had left their morning work undone, because something in the territory's nervous system had telegraphed that today was not a day to stay home. Maggie Wells was in the 3rd row. She had ridden in before dawn and had saved 2 seats with the specific authority of a woman who has decided something is going to happen and has arranged herself accordingly. She looked at Evelyn when she came in and gave a single nod that contained more warmth and steadiness than most people could fit into a full conversation. Clara Finch was already seated near the front pale, and still with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes fixed on a point in the middle distance. She had come. That was the thing. She had been afraid for 6 months, and she had come anyway. Bernard Kerrigan was in the back row. Evelyn had not met him before today. He was 60 broad through the shoulders, with the particular weathering of a man who had spent 40 years working land he loved, and the additional weathering of a man who had been forced to give it up. He looked at her when she came in, and she looked back at him, and neither of them needed to say anything. They had both known Jesse. They were both here because of Jesse. That was enough. Tom Aldridge sat beside Kerrigan with his hat on his knee and his jaw set. Cole was at Evelyn's side. Henry Foss was at the front table arranging his papers with the unhurried precision of a man who has filed everything correctly and knows it and is content to let that correctness do its work. Nathan Crow sat 12 feet away. He was dressed well. He was always dressed well, and his expression carried the managed ease of a man who had survived legal challenges before and expected to survive this one. He had not looked at Evelyn when she came in. That told her something. The Crow who had faced her at the feed store had looked at her with full, deliberate confidence. This Crow was keeping his eyes forward because looking at her was a risk he had decided not to take. Good, she thought. He should be careful. Deputy Voss was not in the room. She noticed that absence and filed it without reaction. Foss had told her the night before that federal marshals from Tucson had been contacted, that Voss's movements were being monitored, that an attempt to leave the county would result in immediate detention. Whether Voss was in custody already or simply absent and aware of what was coming, his absence from this room meant he had no power left to exercise in it. Judge Peters came in at 8:15. He was a lean, deliberate man of 60 who had presided over this territory's legal matters for 9 years and who had the reputation, according to Henry Foss, of a judge who read every document submitted to him and who had never once rendered a judgment faster than the evidence warranted or slower than justice required. He sat. The room settled. "We are here," Peters said, "on the matter of Hartley v. Crow and associated criminal complaints filed by the Territory of Arizona. Mr. Foss." Foss stood. "Thank you, Your Honor." He began with the railway. Not with Jesse, not with the land fraud, not with the death, but with the railway, because the railway was the foundation that everything else had been built to serve. He laid it out in Foss's economical, exact manner: the Arizona and Pacific, survey the land corridor, the projected value, increase the meeting Jesse Hartley had witnessed in the fall of 1880 between Nathan Crow and Elias Drummond of the Railroad Authority. Crow's lead lawyer, a thin man named Aldous, imported from Phoenix, objected twice in the first 5 minutes. Peters overruled both times without looking up from his notes. Foss moved to the land transactions. 7 properties documented with the pattern laid out cleanly: deed irregularity, identified legal pressure applied through Voss's office sale completed at below market value transfer recorded to Meridian Property Associates. Foss placed the Meridian Incorporation documents on the record. Meridian's sole director was listed as Nathan Crow. The room was very quiet. Crow's expression had not changed, but his right hand resting on the table had closed into a shape that was not quite a fist and not quite relaxed. Foss placed Jesse's papers into evidence. The list of transactions, the railway map, the meeting notes. He described how they had been found and where the false bottom of a desk drawer in the Hartley property. And he described what their existence meant, that Jesse Hartley had not only discovered the scheme, but had documented it quietly and carefully over the course of 2 years, with the specific intention of bringing it before a court. Jesse Hartley, Foss said, and his voice carried into every corner of the room, did not live to stand here. But he built this case as if he knew someone would have to stand here in his place, and he built it well. Someone in the gallery made a sound, not a word, just the involuntary sound a person makes when something true lands. Maggie Wells pressed her lips together and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Kerrigan in the back row put his hand flat on his own knee and held it there. John. Aldous rose for cross-examination and tried 3 angles in quick succession: that Jesse's documents were unverified, that the railway survey was speculative, that the land transactions had all been legally recorded. Foss answered each one with a document. The railway survey verified by a signed affidavit from Elias Drummond himself, obtained through the federal authority in Washington, and delivered by telegraph 2 days prior. Drummond, it turned out, had not known that Crow intended to use the advance survey information for personal land acquisition. When federal investigators had contacted him, he had cooperated fully and immediately. Aldous sat down. Crow turned to speak to him, and Aldous leaned away almost imperceptibly, but enough. Peters called Clara Finch. She walked to the front of the room with her hands at her sides and her chin level, and she sat in the witness chair and looked at the judge rather than the gallery, which was the right instinct. It meant she was there to give testimony, not to perform it. Foss took her through the morning of April 14th. The East Road. The dark. Crow's wagon stopped at the bottom of the upper trail. Pete Morrow going up. Pete Morrow coming back down, breathing hard, moving fast. The room listened with the particular focused silence of people who have stopped breathing so they don't miss a word. Aldous crossed. He pushed on visibility. It was dark. She had been behind a fence line. How certain could she be? Certain, Clara said. I recognized the wagon because I had seen it in town 3 times that week. I recognized Morrow because he is a large man, and there are not many large men in this county, and I have seen him with Mr. Crow on multiple occasions. She paused. I have been certain since April. I have been afraid since April. Those are 2 different things. Someone in the gallery said yes under their breath. Peters did not call for order. He let it stand. Bernard Kerrigan took the stand next. He moved carefully the way a man moves when he is carrying something heavy and has decided to carry it to the end regardless. He sat down and looked at Foss and waited. Mr. Kerrigan, Foss said, did Jesse Hartley come to you the night of April 13th? He did. What did he tell you? He told me he had followed Pete Morrow the previous week, that he had seen Morrow on the upper trail at dawn marking something he thought survey markers, or possibly locations, for staging something to look like an accident. Kerrigan's voice was even and slow. He told me he was going back up that trail the next morning to document what he'd found, to photograph the markers if he could. He had a camera, a small one. The room was absolutely still. He told me that if he didn't come back by noon, Kerrigan continued, I should take what he had given me to Henry Foss in Tucson. He gave me a sealed envelope. He paused. He said not to open it, just deliver it. Did you deliver it? Foss asked. Kerrigan looked at his hands. I was afraid. I told myself there was another explanation. I told myself Jesse was being dramatic and he'd be back by 10 and I'd feel foolish for worrying. He stopped. He didn't come back by noon. He didn't come back at all. And I was afraid of what they'd do if I went to a lawyer. I was afraid of Voss. I was afraid of losing what little I had left after the sale. He looked up. I kept the envelope for 6 months. I kept it and told myself every week I would do something with it, and every week I found a reason not to." His voice tightened. "Jesse Hartley died going back up that trail to get evidence that would protect people like me. And I sat in a boarding house in Benson for 6 months holding his envelope." The room breathed. "But you're here now," Foss said quietly. "I'm here now," Kerrigan said. Foss moved to admit the envelope into evidence. Inside it sealed, since April 14th photographs, 6 of them taken on the upper trail showing wooden stakes driven into the earth at specific intervals. Each one marked with a notch that Foss's expert had confirmed by affidavit, matched the technique used to mark false footing ground that had been deliberately compromised to give way under weight. The trail had been prepared. Jesse Hartley had not fallen from a spooked horse. He had walked onto ground that had been engineered to collapse under him. Nathan Crow turned and looked at his lawyer with the first fully unguarded expression Evelyn had seen on his face, and it was not anger, not confidence. It was the expression of a man watching the last door close. Aldous requested a recess. Peters denied it. "Mr. Crow," Peters said, "your counsel may address the criminal complaint at this time." Aldous stood. He spoke for 4 minutes. When he sat down, everyone in the room understood that he had said nothing because there was nothing to say. Peters looked at the documents. He looked at the gallery. He looked at Crow. "Nathan Crow," he said, "on the matter of land fraud involving 7 properties in this county conducted through manufactured deed challenges and unlawful coordination with a public officer of this territory, I find the evidence presented by the plaintiff sufficient to warrant full criminal prosecution under the territorial statutes." He paused. "On the matter of the death of Jesse Hartley, this court refers the evidence presented today to the federal prosecutor's office with a recommendation for immediate investigation and charge on the count of murder in the first degree against Peter Morrow and conspiracy to commit murder against Nathan Crow." He set his pen down. "All properties transferred to Meridian Property Associates under duress are hereby frozen pending review. Mr. Crow's assets in this territory are similarly frozen pending full accounting." The 2 federal marshals who had been standing at the back of the room moved forward. Crow stood up. He stood up before the marshals reached him, and he turned and he looked at the room, at the gallery full of people who had come to watch at the farmers whose land he had taken at Clara Finch, with her hands still folded and her chin still level at Kerrigan in the back row, who had finally done the thing he should have done 6 months ago, and looked steadier for having done it. He looked at Tom Aldridge, who looked back at him with the complete indifference of a man who has already decided his opinion and sees no reason to revise it. He looked at Cole. Cole said nothing. He held Crow's gaze with the particular steadiness of a man who has nothing to prove and has decided that silence is the right response to someone who has run out of anything worth saying. And then Crow looked at Evelyn. She held it. She did not look away. She did not speak. She had said everything that needed to be said through 4 months of work and 2 years of her brother's documentation and every step she had taken from that trading post to this courtroom. She looked at Crow, the way you look at something that has lost its power over you directly, without performance, without needing it to understand what it was looking at. Crow's hand at his side was trembling. It was small, the kind of tremor a man can almost control. Almost. The marshal reached him. Crow turned and walked, and the room watched him go, and no one said anything until the door had closed, and then the sound that came from 45 years of built-up anger and 6 months of fear and 2 years of Jesse Hartley's careful patient work filled the room all at once. It was Maggie who made it to Evelyn first. She put both hands on Evelyn's face the way she might check a child for fever, except that what she was checking for was something else entirely. She was looking for whether Evelyn was still in one piece, whether the weight of the last 4 months had cracked something that didn't show from the outside. Whatever she found satisfied her. She pulled Evelyn close for a moment. "He'd be proud," she said very quietly into Evelyn's hair. "You know that." "I know," Evelyn said. Maggie stepped back. She pressed her lips together and nodded once, and that was the end of that, because Maggie was not a woman who prolonged moments past their natural end. Kerrigan came through the crowd slowly. He stopped in front of Evelyn and held out his hand, and she took it, and he held it for a moment with both of his. "I'm sorry," he said, "for the 6 months." "You're here," she said. Jesse would say that's what matters. Kerrigan looked at her with the eyes of a man who has been carrying guilt long enough to know it doesn't lift all at once, but who can feel for the first time the particular sensation of it beginning to loosen. "The camera," he said. "In the envelope. That was his, wasn't it?" "It was his," she said. Kerrigan nodded. "He told me he'd bought it specifically for this. Said he'd never taken a photograph before in his life, and he practiced for 2 weeks on horses and fence posts until he was sure he could get it right." He paused. "He got it right." Evelyn pressed her hand flat against the front of her coat. The habit of the last 2 days, checking for the envelope that was no longer there, that was now in evidence doing the work it had been built to do. "Yes," she said. "He did." "Tepe." Foss found her 20 minutes later with a folded paper and an expression that said he had more news. "Pete Morrow," he said, "surrendered to the federal marshals in Benson this morning, before the hearing. His lawyer contacted my office at 7 and said Morrow wanted to make a statement in exchange for consideration." "What kind of statement?" "A complete one." Foss paused. "He confirmed everything. The trail preparation, Crow's instructions, Voss's involvement in closing the investigation." He looked at her steadily. "He also confirmed that he acted alone on the trail. That Crow's instruction was to ensure Jesse did not reach town with whatever evidence he had found. That Morrow was told to use his judgment." "He used his judgment," Evelyn said. "He did. And he's prepared to say so under oath because the alternative is facing a murder charge without cooperation, and his lawyer has correctly assessed that cooperation is his only path to a sentence he can survive." Foss paused. "It means Crow faces the conspiracy charge at full weight without a co-defendant available to distribute it. And Voss, arrested this morning, federal jurisdiction. He won't be arraigned in Peter's court. The federal prosecutor is handling it directly." Foss looked at her. "This is going to take time. The trial's the property reviews the asset accounting. Months, possibly longer. But the architecture of it is solid. Your brother built it solid and you finished it solid." She looked at the paper in his hand. "What's that?" Foss unfolded it. "A letter from the Arizona and Pacific Railroad Development Authority. Received yesterday in anticipation of today's outcome." He handed it to her. "They'd like to discuss the land corridor properties with the original owners. They're prepared to negotiate fair value for right-of-way easements rather than full land acquisition. It was Drummond's recommendation apparently made some time ago. Crow had been suppressing it." Evelyn looked at the letter. Fair value. Not Crow's 8%. Not manufactured pressure. Fair value negotiated for easements that would allow the railway to run without stripping the families of the land they'd built. "The Kerrigan property," she said. "He already sold." "The property review may allow for reversal of fraudulent sales," Foss said. "No guarantees, but Kerrigan's case is strong." He paused. "The Bowers and the Halloran widow as well." She folded the letter carefully. "Send them all to me," she said. "I'll make sure they know what's in it." Foss looked at her. "You don't have to." "Jesse knew every one of those families," she said. "He documented every one of those transactions. This is still his case. The least I can do is make sure the people in it know what they're entitled to." Foss nodded slowly. "All right, Miss Hartley." "Evelyn," she said. He almost smiled. "All right, Evelyn." The room had mostly cleared by the time she found Cole. He was standing near the back hat in his hand, watching the last of the gallery filter out with the expression of a man who had been through something large and was still taking the measure of it. She walked to him. "It's done," she said. "Yes. Crow, Voss, Morrow. All of them," he said. She stood beside him, and for a moment neither of them spoke, and it was the good kind of silence, not the silence of two people who have run out of things to say, but the silence of two people who have said enough for right now and are letting the air settle. "The question," he said. She looked at him. "The one you said could wait until after court." She had forgotten she'd said that. Or not forgotten, she had been carrying it quietly in the background of every hour since, the way you carry something you're not ready to put down. "I want to stay," she said. "Not because I owe you anything, and not because I have nowhere else to go. I have the property. I have the horses. I have everything Jesse worked to keep for me." She looked at him directly. "I want to stay because I choose to. Because you are the kind of person who lets someone fight their own fight and stands close enough that they know they're not alone while they do it." She paused. "That's not a small thing. I've met very few people who know how to do it." Cole looked at her steadily. "And because," she continued, "the morning I walked into Tucson with a $10 sign and a horse I'd trained for 12 years, you were the only person in the territory who looked at me and saw that the number on the sign wasn't the number that mattered." He was quiet for a moment. "Is that all?" he said. "No," she said. "But the rest can wait until we're not standing in a courthouse." Something in his face shifted, the particular shift of a man who has been very careful and controlled for a very long time and has just been given permission to put some of that down. "All right," he said. "You say that too much." "I know." He put his hat on. "It's because you keep giving me things I can't argue with." 3 weeks later, on a Thursday evening, with the sky going amber and the horses quiet in the paddock and Maggie Wells in the kitchen, making an amount of food vastly disproportionate to the number of people at the table, Cole Bennett asked Evelyn Hartley to marry him in the most straightforward manner she had ever witnessed anyone perform any action in her life. He handed her a cup of coffee, sat down across from her, and said, "I'd like to marry you, if you want to." She looked at him. "That's the proposal," she said. "Yes. No speech. I gave you the speech at the courthouse." She thought about that. "You're right," she said. "You did." She picked up the coffee. "Yes," she said. "I want to." He nodded. Maggie from the kitchen said, finally, at full volume, without any pretense of not having been listening. They were married 6 weeks after that, on a Saturday morning on the Bennett Ranch, in the presence of everyone who had been part of what had happened and what had come after. Maggie and her sister Ellen. Tom Aldridge, who had put on a clean shirt and looked uncomfortable about it and stood straight anyway. Bernard Kerrigan, who had come from Benson for the week, and who had brought with him a letter confirming that the property review had found in his favor, and that the Kerrigan land would be returned to him by the end of the year. Clara Finch, who stood near the back with the expression of a woman who had done a hard thing and was still getting used to what it felt like to have done it. Henry Foss came. He stood with his hat in his hand and watched the proceedings with the expression of a man who had been a lawyer for 30 years and was seeing in concrete form what it sometimes looked like when the law worked the way it was supposed to. Danny Price was not there. Danny Price had done what Evelyn had told him to do. He had gone to Foss. He had given his statement. He had cooperated fully, and then he had left the county for California because he was 18 years old and had made a mistake he didn't want to spend the rest of his life being defined by. Evelyn had told him before he left that he was making the right call. He had looked like he believed her. The ceremony was short because neither Cole nor Evelyn was the kind of person who needed a ceremony to be long in order for it to be real. The night before, they had sat on the porch after everyone else had gone inside, and the territory had laid out in front of them, wide and dark and full of its own quiet, and Evelyn had said the thing she had been carrying for 6 months. "I'm going to miss him for the rest of my life," she said. "I know," Cole said. "Not less over time, just differently." "Yes." She looked at the paddock, at Dusty visible in the dark as a deeper darkness, moving slow and easy in the way of a horse that is exactly where it expects to be. "He would have liked you," she said. Cole was quiet for a moment. "I know, I liked him." "He would have argued with you." "About what?" "Everything. He argued with everyone he respected." She almost smiled. "He said it was the only honest way to learn someone." Cole considered this. "Then I would have argued back. He would have appreciated that." She looked at the stars, at the particular density of the Arizona sky, the stars pressing close, the dark between them. Absolute, the whole thing, indifferent and beautiful, and exactly as it had always been, and would go on being, regardless of railways and land fraud and courtrooms, and grief and love, and every other human effort to matter in the face of something that large. "Jesse knew I'd find the papers," she said. "He knew I'd come back to the house and I'd look in the right place. He built the hiding place for you." "Yes." She paused. "He also knew that once I found them, I'd be in it. That I'd have to see it through." She looked at Cole. He knew all of that when he went up that trail the next morning. Cole looked at her. "He trusted you," he said. "Completely." "Yes." She looked back at the paddock. "So I trusted myself. And here we are." Cole put his hand over hers on the armrest, and she let it stay. At the wedding. When the moment came, Evelyn held Cole's hand and said the words with the specific intention of feeling each one, not rushing through them, not treating them as a formality that preceded the real thing. The real thing was right here. The real thing was standing in front of her with calloused hands and an honest face and 11 years of a life he had built well and lived alone and was ready carefully and truly to share. She paused before the last line, not from hesitation. From something that was the opposite of hesitation, the deliberate choice to be present in the exact moment she was in, without rushing toward what came next. Cole felt the pause. He looked at her. She looked back. He understood. He waited. She said the last line. Maggie made a sound in the front row that was not crying. It was the sound a person makes when something they have been hoping for a long time finally becomes true, and hope turns into something weightier and better. Tom Aldridge looked at the ground and pressed his mouth together and looked back up. Bernard Kerrigan in the third row put his hands on his knees and exhaled the long, slow breath of a man who has been holding something for a very long time and has finally put it down. Clara Finch, near the back, looked at the couple at the front of the room and thought about Jesse Hartley, whom she had never spoken to, but whose evidence she had helped protect, and she thought that the distance between fear and courage was smaller than she had imagined, and that the cost of crossing it was high, but the cost of not crossing it was higher, and she was glad she had crossed. In the weeks after the wedding, the Bennett Ranch expanded its horse program. Not quickly, not recklessly. The way Evelyn Hartley had always done things deliberately with attention to what each animal needed and what the land could support, and what the work required of the people doing it. The railway was confirmed publicly in February. The land corridor properties more than doubled in value and then doubled again. The families who had sold under Crow's pressure received offers of restoration from the territory backed by the federal case Foss had built from Jesse's papers. Not every property came back, but most did, and the ones that didn't were compensated fairly properly at the values they should have been paid from the beginning. Crow's trial began in March and lasted 4 weeks. Evelyn attended the opening day and the verdict. She did not attend everything in between because she had work to do and a ranch to run, and a life that was not organized around Nathan Crow. The verdict was guilty on 11 counts. The sentence was 20 years. Voss received 15 federal jurisdiction transferred to a penitentiary in New Mexico. Pete Morrow received 12 with the cooperation discount his lawyer had negotiated. He would serve every one of them. Evelyn heard all of this from Foss by letter on a Tuesday afternoon, sitting on the porch with Dusty in the paddock and Cole somewhere in the north pasture, and the whole territory stretched out in its April quiet. She read the letter twice. She folded it. She sat for a while. Then she said to no one, and to Jesse, and to the specific weight of a thing that had finally fully come to rest, "There it is." She stood up and went back inside. On the kitchen table beside the lamp, Jesse's Bible had once occupied in their family home, the same lamp brought from the Hartley property. When she moved in for good, she placed the letter next to a small framed photograph. Not a portrait. A photograph of the upper trail in April, taken 6 months after Jesse's death on a morning when the light came in exactly right, and the territory looked exactly like what it was, difficult and vast and beautiful, and full of the particular possibility that belongs to places where people have done hard things and come through. Jesse had bought the camera to document injustice. Evelyn had used it that morning on the trail to document something else. Persistence, the kind that outlasts the people who try to end it. She touched the edge of the frame. Then she put the kettle on because Cole would be back from the north pasture in 20 minutes, and he drank his coffee too hot, and she had learned to have it ready. That was not a small thing either. That was everything.